The emergency signal came through at 0300 hours, waking Captain Jake Morrison from his sleep. The red lights in his cabin flashed as the ship's computer announced incoming priority message. Jake rolled out of bed and pressed the communication button on his wall panel. Captain Morrison here. What's the situation? Sir, we're getting distress calls from 3 outer colonies. They all went silent within the last 6 hours, reported Lieutenant Ben Rodriguez from the bridge. Jake pulled on his uniform and rushed to the bridge of the New Horizon. His crew was already at their stations, faces showing worry and confusion. The main screen displayed a star map with 3 red dots marking the silent colonies. What happened to them? Jake asked of Dr. Lisa Carter. The ship's science officer looked up from her console. The last transmission we received was from Colony 7. They reported massive ships approaching their system. Ships unlike anything we've seen before. Jake studied the partial message on the screen. The transmission was broken and filled with static, but he could make out voices screaming in the background. The final words were clear enough. They're not stopping. They're killing everyone. Have we contacted Earth Command? Jake asked. Yes, sir. But they're 3 days away even at maximum speed. The Galactic Council has called an emergency meeting. But that could take weeks, Ben replied. Jake knew that weeks would be too late. Whatever had attacked those colonies was moving fast and showed no interest in talking. The New Horizon was a science ship, not a warship, but they were the closest vessel to the affected area. Set course for Colony 7. We need to see what we're dealing with, Jake ordered. His crew exchanged worried glances. Amy Watson, the chief engineer, spoke up. Captain, if something destroyed 3 colonies in 6 hours, maybe we should wait for military backup. But by the time backup arrives, whatever did this might be heading for Earth. We need information now. Jake replied. The New Horizon changed course and jumped to faster than light speed. During the journey, Dr. Carter worked with the ship's computer to analyze the few surviving recordings from the colonies. What she found made her blood run cold. The attackers were called the Cathara. They stood 12 feet tall with black shells, covering their bodies like armor. They had 6 eyes that could see in different types of light, and their hands ended in sharp claws that could cut through metal. They move faster than any creature their size should be able to move. According to the Galactic database, the Cathara have conquered 47 star systems, Dr. Carter reported to Jake. No species has ever successfully fought them for more than 6 months. They don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. They just kill everything. Jake studied the images on his screen. The Cathara looked like something from a nightmare. Their ships were even worse. Instead of being built like human ships, they appeared to be grown like living creatures. The hulls could heal damage, and the weapons were part of the ship's body. How many of them are there? Jake asked. Unknown, but their empire spans 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. They've been expanding for 3,000 years. Dr. Carter answered. The New Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Colony 7's system. What they found there made the crew gasp in horror. The colony's space station was broken into pieces, floating in orbit around the planet. The planet itself was glowing with fires that could be seen from space. Life signs? Jake asked quietly. Ben checked his sensors and shook his head. Nothing, sir. No human life signs anywhere in the system. Jake clenched his fists. Colony 7 had been home to 50,000 people, including families and children. Now they were all gone, killed by creatures that seemed to enjoy destruction. Captain, I'm picking up something else, Amy reported from her engineering station. There are still Cathara ships in the system. 3 of them, hiding behind the planet's largest moon. Jake's heart started beating faster. The Cathara were still here, probably searching for any survivors to kill. This was humanity's first real look at their enemy. Can we get closer without being detected? Maybe if we power down most of our systems and drift in slowly, Amy replied. Jake made a decision that would change everything. Do it. We need to learn how they fight. The New Horizon went dark except for essential systems. They drifted toward the moon like a piece of space debris. The Cathara ships came into view on their screens, and Jake realized that all the reports had been too small to describe their true horror. Each ship was the size of a small city, covered in what looked like black scales. Weapons grew from their hulls like thorns, and they moved through space with the smooth motion of swimming creatures. These were not just ships, they were living weapons. "My God," whispered Dr. Carter. "They're beautiful and terrible at the same time." Jake watched as one of the Cathara ships fired its weapons at the remains of the human colony. The beam didn't just destroy the target. It seemed to eat it, dissolving the metal and stone into nothing. These creatures didn't just kill. They erased all evidence that their enemies had ever existed. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," Ben announced suddenly. The main screen flickered, and a face appeared that made everyone on the bridge step backward. The creature had 6 red eyes arranged in 2 rows, and its mouth was filled with teeth like broken glass. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. "Human vessel, you are in Cathara territory. Surrender now, and your death will be quick." Jake realized they had been discovered. The Cathara had been watching them the entire time, probably laughing at their attempt to hide. Now they had to make a choice: run away and let Earth remain defenseless, or stay and try to learn something that might save humanity. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel New Horizon. Why did you attack our colonies?" The Cathara's 6 eyes blinked slowly. "Because they were there. Because they were weak. Because that is what we do. We are the Cathara. We are the strongest. All others serve or die. We want to talk." "Maybe we can work something out," Jake said, knowing it was probably hopeless. The creature's mouth opened in what might have been laughter. "There is nothing to discuss. You will all die. Your species will die. Your planet will burn. This is the way of things." The transmission ended, and immediately the 3 Cathara ships began moving toward the New Horizon. Jake knew they had only minutes before the most powerful predators in the galaxy would be close enough to destroy them completely. All power to engines. "Get us out of here," Jake ordered as the New Horizon fled from Colony 7. Jake made a promise to himself and his crew. Somehow, he would find a way to stop these monsters. Humanity might be weaker and smaller, but they had something the Cathara didn't seem to understand. They had the ability to think in ways that no other species could imagine. The war for humanity's survival had begun, and Jake Morrison was going to make sure it ended with the right side winning. War Prime Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Render, watching the stars pass by as his fleet moved toward the human homeworld. His massive form cast shadows across the living walls of the ship, which pulsed with a heartbeat that matched his own. The War Prime was the greatest warrior the Cathara had ever produced. His black shell bore the scars of 1,000 battles, and his claws had personally killed the leaders of dozens of species. He had never known defeat, never retreated, never shown mercy to an enemy. "Report," he commanded, his voice rumbling through the ship's nervous system. Sub-Commander Vrextall approached, his own impressive form still dwarfed by the War Prime. "The advanced scouts have finished their study of the human species. They are even weaker than we first believed." Zethkar examined the data flowing across the ship's living screens. Humans were small, with soft skin and no natural weapons. They could only see in a narrow range of light. Their hearing was limited, and they would die if exposed to space for even a few minutes. Most amusing of all, they live for less than 100 years. "How many humans are there?" Zethkar asked. "Approximately 12 billion on their homeworld, with perhaps 3 billion more scattered across their colonies," Vrextall replied. The War Prime's 6 eyes blinked slowly. Such a large population usually meant a species was strong, but humans seemed to multiply like insects despite their weakness. No matter, the Cathara had destroyed larger populations before. "How long until we reach their system?" 4 days, War Prime. "The fleet is ready for immediate assault upon arrival." Zethkar nodded. 4 days and another species would be extinct. The Cathara Empire would grow stronger, and he would add another victory to his endless list of conquests. The humans would barely be worth remembering. Meanwhile, Aboard the New Horizon, Jake Morrison gathered his crew in the main conference room. They had been running from the Kithara for 2 days, using every trick they knew to stay ahead of their pursuers, but Jake knew running wouldn't save Earth. "We need to find a way to fight them," Jake announced. Commander Ryan Torres, the ship's tactical officer, shook his head. "Captain, I've run every simulation I can think of. The Kithara ships are immune to our weapons. Their hulls regenerate faster than we can damage them. One of their warriors could probably defeat 50 of our best soldiers. Then we don't fight them the way they expect," Jake replied. Dr. Carter leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "I've been studying the recordings from our encounter. Did you notice how the Kithara reacted when we first appeared? They announced their presence, stated their intentions, and then attacked directly. No surprise, no deception, no complex strategy." Amy Watson frowned. "Maybe they don't need complex strategies. When you're that strong, you can just smash through anything." "Oh, maybe they can't think any other way," Jake suggested. "Lisa, what? Did you learn about their psychology?" Dr. Carter pulled up her notes. "Their society is built on honor and strength. They believe that the strongest should rule, and that direct confrontation is the only acceptable way to prove strength. They seem to have no concept of lying or trickery." "That's our advantage," Jake said. "Every species they've fought has tried to beat them at their own game. Big ships, powerful weapons, direct assault, but humans fight differently." Ben Rodriguez looked confused. "How do we fight differently?" Jake smiled grimly. "We cheat." The crew stared at him. In human society, cheating was sometimes seen as wrong, but in war, it was called strategy. Jake realized that the Kithara probably couldn't understand the difference. "Think about it," Jake continued. "We use camouflage, ambush tactics, false retreats, diversions. We sacrifice pawns to capture kings. We pretend to be weak when we're strong, and strong when we're weak. To us, that's just smart fighting. To them, it might be completely incomprehensible." Dr. Carter's eyes widened. "You think they literally can't understand deception?" "I think their entire species evolved without it. They're perfect predators, but perfect predators don't need to lie. They just kill everything weaker than themselves." Ryan began to look interested. "So what's the plan?" Jake stood up and walked to the star map. "We're going to do something no other species has ever done. We're going to make the Kithara think we're running away, then hit them from behind when they least expect it." "That's suicide," Amy protested. "Even if we surprise them, we can't damage their ships?" "We don't need to damage them. We just need to confuse them," Jake replied. "Lisa, you said their ships are living creatures. What happens to living creatures?" "When they're confused," Dr. Carter thought for a moment, "they make mistakes, they hesitate. They sometimes freeze up completely." "Exactly. We're going to turn the galaxy's greatest predators into prey." Over the next day, the crew of the New Horizon worked to modify their ship. They couldn't make it stronger, but they could make it sneakier. Amy rigged the engines to produce false energy signatures, making it appear that the ship was larger or smaller than it actually was. Ben programmed the sensors to create decoy signals that would show multiple ships where only one existed. Dr. Carter worked on understanding Kithara psychology. She discovered that their honor code was so rigid that it might actually be a weakness. They always attacked the strongest target first, never retreated once battle was joined, and couldn't comprehend the idea of sacrificing the few to save the many. Jake planned their first test. They would intercept a Kithara patrol and try a simple deception. If it worked, they would know they were on the right track. If it failed, they would probably all die. The patrol consisted of 3 Kithara ships, each one larger than the New Horizon. Jake positioned his ship behind an asteroid field and waited. When the patrol passed by, he powered up his engines and flew directly at them. The Kithara ships immediately turned to face this new threat. Their weapons powered up, and Jake could almost feel their excitement at finding prey foolish enough to attack them directly. But at the last second, Jake did something the Kithara had never seen before. He turned his ship around and fled, broadcasting a message of surrender and panic. The Cathara ships pursued, confident in their inevitable victory. Jake had led them into a trap. Hidden among the asteroids were sensor buoys that Amy had modified to create false readings. When the Cathara ships entered the field, their sensors suddenly showed dozens of human ships surrounding them. For the first time in their species' history, the Cathara hesitated. Their programming told them to attack the strongest target, but they couldn't tell which targets were real. Their honor code said they should never retreat, but they also couldn't advance without knowing where to strike. In that moment of confusion, Jake struck. The New Horizon emerged from behind a large asteroid and fired its mining laser at the lead Cathara ship. The laser wasn't powerful enough to cause serious damage, but it hit the ship in a location that no enemy had ever targeted before. From directly above, the Cathara ship's living hull recoiled in surprise. Its weapons swung wildly, trying to track a target that was already gone. Jake had disappeared behind another asteroid before the enemy could react. The battle lasted only a few minutes, but it proved Jake's theory. The Cathara ships spent most of their time firing at empty space, chasing sensor ghosts, and trying to understand what was happening. When Jake finally retreated for real, the patrol was damaged, confused, and angry. Most importantly, word of the encounter would reach War Prime Zethkar. For the first time in his life, the galaxy's greatest predator would hear a report that didn't make sense. The humans had run away, then attacked, then run away again. They had used weapons that barely worked, but somehow left 3 of his ships. Limping back for repairs, Zethkar would be intrigued, and that was exactly what Jake wanted. The War Prime was used to enemies who fought with honor and strength. He had never faced an enemy who fought with cunning and deception. As the New Horizon fled toward its next ambush point, Jake allowed himself a small smile. The Cathara thought. They were hunting humans, but Jake was going to turn the hunt around. He was going to teach the galaxy's strongest predator what it felt like to be prey. The real battle was just beginning. War Prime Zethkar stared at the battle report for the 3rd time, his 6 eyes blinking slowly as he tried to understand what he was reading. 3 of his patrol ships had encountered a single human vessel and somehow returned damaged and confused. "Explain this to me again," he commanded Subcommander Vrextal. The human ship appeared to flee, then attacked from an unexpected angle, then fled again. "Our ships report that their sensors detected multiple human vessels, but visual confirmation showed only one," Vrextal reported. His voice uncertain, Zethkar's claws scraped against the living metal of his ship's bridge. In 3,000 years of conquest, no enemy had ever behaved this way. The humans were acting like prey, then striking like predators, then becoming prey again. It made no sense. "Send 20 ships to hunt down this human vessel." "I want it destroyed," Zethkar ordered. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison was preparing for the next phase of his plan. The New Horizon had successfully escaped the patrol encounter, but Jake knew the Cathara would respond with greater force. That was exactly what he wanted. "Captain, sensors are picking up a large Cathara fleet heading our way." 20 ships, all moving at maximum speed, Ben Rodriguez reported. Jake nodded. "Perfect. Amy, are the modifications ready?" "Chief Engineer." Amy Watson checked her console. "Yes, sir. The ship's hull is now coated with sensor-absorbing material. We can appear and disappear from their screens at will. The engine modifications are complete, too. We can change our energy signature to match asteroids, debris, or even empty space. And the surprise packages? 30 decoy probes, each one programmed to mimic our ship's signature. They'll think they're chasing us when they're really chasing empty metal shells." Jake smiled. The Cathara were about to learn that hunting humans was very different from hunting other species. The battle began when the Cathara fleet entered the asteroid field where Jake had been waiting. Their sensors immediately detected the New Horizon's signature, and all 20 ships moved to surround it. But when they arrived at the location, they found only empty space. "Target has vanished," reported the fleet commander to War Prime Zethkar. "Impossible. Ships do not vanish," Zethkar replied. "Sir, we're now detecting the human vessel in 3 different locations simultaneously." Zethkar's claws extended involuntarily. That is also impossible. What the Kithara didn't know was that Jake had spent days preparing this asteroid field. His crew had placed sensor reflectors throughout the area, creating a maze of false signals. The real New Horizon was hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid, completely invisible to enemy sensors. "Sir, the human ship is firing at us from behind," reported another Kithara captain. "Pursue and destroy," Zethkar commanded, but when the Kithara ships turned to face this new threat, they found themselves firing at one of Amy's decoy probes. The probe exploded harmlessly, but the Kithara ships were now out of formation and confused. Jake chose that moment to strike. The New Horizon emerged from its hiding place and fired its mining laser at the nearest Kithara ship. The beam struck the ship's weapon clusters, temporarily disabling them. Before the enemy could react, Jake's ship disappeared again. For the next 2 hours, the 20 Kithara ships chased shadows and fought empty air. Every time they thought they had cornered the human vessel, it would vanish and reappear somewhere else. Their powerful weapons destroyed dozens of asteroids, but the New Horizon remained untouched. Dr. Carter monitored the Kithara communications during the battle. "Captain, they're getting more frustrated by the minute. Their commanders are arguing with each other about tactics. I don't think they've ever faced a situation like this." "Good," Jake replied. "Confusion is our weapon." The battle ended when Jake did something that broke the Kithara's understanding of warfare completely. He broadcast a surrender message, powering down his weapons and engines. The Kithara ships approached cautiously, expecting a trap but unable to comprehend what it might be. When they were close enough, Jake activated the New Horizon's self-destruct sequence. The ship's reactor overloaded, creating a massive explosion that destroyed 3 Kithara vessels and damaged 5 others. But at the last second, Jake and his crew escaped in hidden life pods that had been disguised as debris. The Kithara survivors searched the wreckage for bodies, but found nothing. The humans had committed suicide to avoid capture, then somehow survived their own deaths. It was impossible, illogical, and completely beyond their understanding. War Prime Zethkar received the report in stunned silence. The humans had destroyed more of his ships in one battle than some species had managed in entire wars, and they had done it with a single vessel that shouldn't have been able to harm even one of his ships. "How many humans were on that ship?" he asked. 12, War Prime. "The ship was destroyed, but we found no bodies." Zethkar stood up, his massive form towering over his subordinates. "Find them. I want to understand how they fight." But Jake and his crew were already putting the next phase of their plan into action. They had stolen a damaged Kithara scout ship during the confusion of the battle, and Amy was working frantically to make it spaceworthy. "This ship is amazing," she reported. "It's like a living creature. The hull is already healing the damage we caused during the theft." Dr. Carter was studying the ship's biological systems. "It's connected to the Kithara fleet through some kind of biological network. It's sharing information with every other ship in the fleet." Jake realized the implications immediately. "You mean they all know what one ship knows?" "Exactly. It makes them incredibly efficient, but it also creates a weakness. If we can disrupt the network, we can paralyze the entire fleet." Ben was monitoring Kithara communications from the stolen ship. "Captain, they're calling off the attack on Earth. War Prime Zethkar is coming here personally, with his entire fleet." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The War Prime was the most dangerous Kithara alive, and he was bringing hundreds of ships to hunt down 12 humans. It should have been terrifying, but Jake realized it was actually an opportunity. "He's curious," Jake said. "We've done something he's never seen before, and he needs to understand it. That means he'll be thinking about us instead of just destroying us." Dr. Carter looked worried. "Captain, the reports say War Prime Zethkar has personally killed thousands of enemy leaders. He's never been defeated." "Then it's time he learned what defeat feels like," Jake replied. As the stolen Kithara ship limped toward the Dead Star system, where Jake planned to make his final stand, he thought about what they had accomplished. They had taken the galaxy's greatest predators and turned them into confused, Frustrated hunters chasing prey they couldn't understand. The Cathara were stronger, faster, and more numerous than humans. But humans had something the Cathara didn't. Possess the ability to think like their enemy, then do the exact opposite of what was expected. Jake looked at his crew. 12 ordinary humans who had somehow managed to outfight an empire. They were tired, scared, and flying a stolen enemy ship toward what would probably be their deaths. But they were also proving something important about humanity. Humans didn't win by being the strongest. They won by being the smartest, the most adaptable, and the most willing to do whatever it took to survive. The Cathara were about to learn that lesson firsthand. War Prime Zethkar was coming, and Jake Morrison was ready for him. The final confrontation would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the future of the entire galaxy. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy's greatest predator was walking into a trap. War Prime Zethkar stood before the massive view screen of the Bone Render, watching the dead star system grow larger as his fleet approached. Behind him, 300 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy followed in perfect formation. He had brought enough force to destroy entire civilizations, all to hunt down 12 humans. War Prime, we have arrived at the coordinates where the human ship was last detected, reported Subcommander Vrextal. Zethkar nodded, his 6 eyes scanning the asteroid field that surrounded the collapsed star. Somewhere in that maze of floating rock, the humans were waiting. He could feel it in his bones. Deploy the fleet in hunting formation. I want every asteroid scanned, every piece of debris investigated. The humans cannot hide from us forever. But even as he gave the order, Zethkar felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. The humans had done impossible things, fought in ways that defied logic, and survived situations that should have killed them. For the first time in his life, the galaxy's greatest predator was hunting prey that might be hunting him back. Jake Morrison watched the Cathara fleet enter the asteroid field through the stolen scout ship's sensors. The massive vessels moved with terrifying grace, their living hulls gleaming in the light of the dead star. He had never seen so much destructive power in one place. "Captain, there are 300 ships out there," Ben Rodriguez whispered. "How are we supposed to fight that many?" Jake smiled grimly. "We're not going to fight them. We're going to make them fight themselves." For the past week, Jake's crew had been preparing this asteroid field for the final confrontation. They had turned the entire system into a 3-dimensional maze where nothing was what it seemed. Amy had rigged dozens of asteroids with explosive charges. Dr. Carter had set up a network of sensor decoys, and Ben had programmed false signals that would lead the Cathara ships in circles. But Jake's greatest weapon was his understanding of Cathara psychology. They were predators who had never learned to think like prey. They expected enemies to either run or fight directly. They had no experience with traps that used their own instincts against them. Beginning Phase 1, Jake announced. The New Horizons signature suddenly appeared on Cathara sensors, broadcasting a message of defiance from the heart of the asteroid field. The message was simple: "Come and get us." War Prime Zethkar's eyes blazed with fury. "The humans dare to challenge us? Very well. All ships, attack formation. We will show them what happens to those who oppose the Cathara Empire." The entire fleet moved toward the signal, their weapons powering up for the kill. But as they entered the asteroid field, strange things began to happen. Ships reported multiple targets when their commanders could see only one. Sensors detected threats that didn't exist and missed dangers that were right in front of them. War Prime. "The human ship has vanished again," reported one captain. "Impossible," Zethkar growled. "Ships do not simply vanish." But the New Horizon had done more than vanish. It had split into a dozen different signals, each one appearing to be a full-sized vessel. The Cathara fleet found itself chasing shadows, while the real threat moved unseen among them. Jake watched the chaos unfold with satisfaction. The Cathara ships were getting separated, confused, and increasingly frustrated. Their perfect formations were breaking down as individual captains pursued what they thought were enemy vessels. "Phase 2, Jake ordered. Amy triggered the first series of explosions. Asteroids throughout the field erupted and carefully timed blasts, creating debris clouds that blocked sensors and confused targeting systems. The Kithara found themselves firing at empty space while real threats approached from unexpected angles. Dr. Carter had been studying the biological network that connected all Kithara ships. She had discovered that it could be disrupted by specific frequencies like jamming a radio signal. When she activated her equipment, the network began to break down. Suddenly, the Kithara fleet found itself blind and deaf. Ships that had shared information instantly for thousands of years were now isolated, cut off from their collective intelligence. They began making mistakes, firing at their own allies and losing track of their objectives. War Prime Zethkar felt the network failure like a physical blow. The constant whisper of information from his fleet suddenly went silent, leaving him alone in his thoughts for the first time in decades. "Restore the network," he commanded. "We are trying, War Prime, but the humans are broadcasting some kind of interference signal. We cannot locate the source." Zethkar's claws extended to their full length. The humans had found a way to attack the very foundation of Kithara society. Without the network, his ships were just individual vessels, powerful but no longer part of a greater whole. "Then we hunt them the old way," he decided. "All ships spread out and search every asteroid. Kill anything that moves." Jake had been waiting for this moment. The Kithara were now hunting randomly, their discipline broken by confusion and frustration. It was time for the final phase of his plan. "Ben, broadcast the surrender message," Jake ordered. "Sir? Trust me." Ben activated the communication system, and Jake's voice echoed across the Kithara fleet. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel New Horizon. We surrender. We are powering down our weapons and prepare to be boarded." The message was broadcast from the center of the asteroid field, where the New Horizon sat motionless with its weapons powered down. To the Kithara, it looked like the humans had finally given up. War Prime Zethkar smiled for the first time in days. "Finally. All ships converge on the human vessel, but be careful, this may be another trick." The Kithara fleet moved cautiously toward the New Horizon, expecting a trap but unable to see what it might be. Their sensors showed a single human ship, dead in space. Apparently surrendering when they were close enough, Jake activated the final surprise. The New Horizon's reactor didn't explode this time. Instead, it released a massive electromagnetic pulse that overloaded every Kithara ship within 100 kilometers. The living ships writhed in pain as their biological systems were disrupted. Weapons went offline, engines failed, and life support systems struggled to function. In seconds, Jake had crippled a third of the Kithara fleet, but the pulse had also destroyed the New Horizon. Jake and his crew escaped in the life pods they had hidden throughout the asteroid field, but their ship was gone. They were now floating in space, surrounded by hundreds of enemy vessels. War Prime Zethkar felt his flagship shudder as the electromagnetic pulse washed over it. The Bone Render was large enough to survive the attack, but many of his other ships were disabled or destroyed. "Find them," he commanded. "Find the humans and bring them to me alive. I want to understand how they fight." But Jake had one more trick to play. As the Kithara ship searched the debris field for survivors, he did something that no other species had ever attempted. He broadcast a message directly to War Prime Zethkar, challenging him to single combat. "I know you can hear me, War Prime. You want to understand how humans fight? Then face me yourself. One-on-one on the surface of that asteroid. If you win, my crew will surrender. If I win, you call off your attack on Earth." The message was impossible to ignore. In Kithara culture, a direct challenge from an enemy leader could not be refused without losing honor, but it was also obviously a trap. No human could defeat a Kithara warrior in single combat. Zethkar studied the tactical situation. The humans had surprised him repeatedly, used tactics he had never seen before, and somehow survived encounters that should have killed them. Now their leader was offering to face him in the one type of battle where Kithara superiority was absolute. "Prepare my shuttle," he ordered. I will face this human myself. As War Prime Zethkar prepared to meet Jake Morrison on the surface of a dead asteroid, both leaders knew that this confrontation would determine more than just the fate of Earth. It would decide whether the galaxy's greatest predator would remain supreme, or whether humanity would teach the universe a new way to fight. The final battle was about to begin. The asteroid was barely large enough to hold both warriors, its surface scarred by countless impacts over millions of years. Jake Morrison stood on one side, his human form looking impossibly small in the vast emptiness of space. On the other side, War Prime Zethkar towered like a living mountain, his 12-foot frame casting shadows across the rocky ground. Both leaders had come alone as honor demanded. Jake wore only his standard spacesuit, carrying no weapons except a simple combat knife. Zethkar needed no weapons. His claws could cut through steel, his shell could deflect bullets, and his 6 eyes could track movement faster than most creatures could think. So, Zethkar said, his voice rumbling through the communication channel, "You are the human who has caused me so much trouble." Jake looked up at the massive alien warrior. "I'm just a guy trying to save his people." "Your people are weak? Your species is weak? You should have died when we first arrived in your territory," Zethkar replied. "Yet somehow you have destroyed more of my ships than civilizations 100 times stronger than yours." "We're good at surprising people," Jake said simply. Zethkar's 6 eyes studied the small human before him. "Explain to me how you fight. Your weapons are inferior, your ships are fragile, your bodies break easily. Yet you have done what no other species has accomplished." Jake smiled inside his helmet. "You really want to know? I have conquered 47 star systems. I have killed the greatest warriors of a dozen species. But I do not understand how you fight, and that disturbs me." "The thing is," Jake said, "you're right about everything. We are weak, our weapons are inferior, our ships are fragile. But that's exactly why we win." Zethkar's head tilted slightly. "Explain." "Every other species you've fought has tried to be stronger than you. They built bigger ships, more powerful weapons, trained harder warriors. They tried to beat you at your own game. But humans don't play fair." Jake began walking slowly around the asteroid's surface, keeping his distance from the War Prime. We cheat, we run away and then attack from behind. We pretend to surrender and then explode our own ships. We sacrifice a few to save many. We do whatever it takes to survive. These are the tactics of cowards," Zethkar growled. "Maybe, but they work," Jake replied. "You know what your biggest weakness is? You're predictable. You always attack the strongest target first. You never retreat once battle is joined. You can't understand the idea of losing a battle to win a war." Zethkar's claws extended slightly. "We are honorable warriors." "And that's why you'll lose," Jake said. "Because honor is a luxury that only the strong can afford. And despite everything, humans are still weaker than you, so we adapted. We learned to think in ways you can't imagine." The War Prime was quiet. For a long moment, "You speak of adaptation. But adaptation is evolution, and evolution makes species stronger. How does being weaker make you stronger?" Jake stopped walking and faced the massive alien directly. "Because when you're the strongest creature in the galaxy, you stop growing, you stop learning, you stop changing. But when you're weak, you have to keep getting smarter, keep finding new ways to survive." "And you believe this makes humans superior to Cathara?" "I believe it makes us different. And different is dangerous to someone who's used to everything being the same." Zethkar stood up to his full height, his shadow falling across Jake like a dark cloud. "Interesting words, human, but words will not save you now. We came here to fight, and fight we shall." Jake reached for his combat knife, knowing it was useless against Cathara armor. "Actually, we came here to talk. The fighting was just how I got your attention." "What? Think about it. I challenged you to single combat, but I've been talking for the last 10 minutes instead of attacking. I'm weak, remember? If I really wanted to fight you, I would have tried to surprise you by now." Zethkar's 6 eyes blinked rapidly. The human was right. In any normal combat situation, the weaker opponent would try to strike first. hoping to land a lucky blow before being destroyed. But Jake Morrison was just standing there, talking. "Then what is your purpose here?" Zethkar asked. "To show you something no other species has ever shown you, a different way of thinking, a different way of being strong." Jake gestured toward the stars around them. "Your empire is huge, powerful, perfect, but it's also stagnant. You've been doing the same thing for 3,000 years. Conquer, destroy, move on. You've never grown beyond what you were when you first left your homeworld. We are already perfect. Why would we need to grow? Because the universe is bigger than you think. There are challenges out there that can't be solved with claws and armor, problems that require new ways of thinking. And someday you're going to meet something that's not afraid of your strength." Zethkar was quiet for a long time. Around them, the disabled Cathara fleet waited in the darkness, watching their greatest leader talk with a creature that should have been dead within seconds of the battle beginning. "You propose what, exactly?" Zethkar finally asked. "Partnership. You're the strongest warriors in the galaxy. We're the best survivors. Together we could explore parts of the universe that neither of us could handle alone. You ask me to ally with prey. I'm asking you to evolve." The words hung in the vacuum between them. Jake knew he was asking for something that had never happened in Cathara history. But he also knew that Zethkar was intelligent enough to understand the logic. "Your fleet is damaged," Jake continued. "Half your ships are disabled, your biological network is disrupted. You could destroy Earth, but it would cost you more ships, more warriors, more resources. For what? To add one more dead world to your empire? To maintain our dominance? But what if there was a better way to be dominant? What if instead of destroying everything weaker than you, you learned from it?" Zethkar stared at the small human for a long moment. "You're asking me to change everything my people believe. I'm asking you to consider that maybe strength isn't just about being able to kill things. Maybe real strength is about being able to learn, adapt, and grow." The War Prime walked to the edge of the asteroid and looked out at his fleet. 300 ships, the pride of the Cathara Empire, and 12 humans had nearly destroyed them using nothing but clever tricks and superior tactics. When he turned back to Jake, something had changed in his 6 eyes. "In 3,000 years of conquest, no enemy has ever made me question our methods. You have done this in less than a week. Because I'm not your enemy, I'm your teacher." Zethkar's massive form seemed to shrink slightly. "What you ask is unprecedented. The Cathara serve only the strongest. It is our most fundamental law. Then maybe it's time for a new law." The War Prime stood silent for several minutes, his alien mind processing concepts that had never existed in Cathara culture. Finally he spoke. "You believe that adaptability is stronger than physical power? I believe that the ability to change is the strongest power of all." Zethkar looked at Jake Morrison, this small, weak, fragile human who had somehow turned the galaxy's greatest predators into confused prey. And slowly, impossibly, the War Prime began to lower himself toward the asteroid's surface. "Then teach me," Zethkar said, and for the first time in Cathara history, the strongest warrior in the galaxy bowed to another being. Jake felt his heart racing as he watched the massive alien lower his head in respect. "The first lesson is easy. We don't bow to each other, we stand together as equals." Zethkar raised himself back up, but something fundamental had changed. The rigid hierarchy that had defined Cathara society for millennia had just been broken by a simple act of mutual respect. "What happens now?" Zethkar asked. Jake smiled. "Now we go exploring. There's a whole universe out there, and I think it's time we showed it what humans and Cathara can accomplish together." 6 months later, the combined fleet of humans and Cathara departed from Earth's solar system. The New Horizon 2, rebuilt with both human and Cathara technology, led the way into unknown space. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge alongside War Prime Zethkar, planning their route to regions of the galaxy that no one had ever explored. The other species of the galaxy watched in amazement, as the universe's most feared predators willingly followed a human captain into the unknown. And in the depths of space, new challenges waited that would require both human cunning and Cathara strength to overcome. Jake Morrison had saved humanity not by defeating the Cathara, but by teaching them that true strength came from the courage to change, and in doing so, he had changed the course of galactic history forever.